If you haven't watched it already, obviously, spoilers ahead. I don't know how. Sometimes we get crazy spoilery. And
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast, with your hosts, Connor O'Neill and Matthew Hughes.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Misfit Podcast.
Hello. It's us back at it again.
Hope you guys had a great July. There was Canada Day that's the very first day of July, and July 4th for all of our American friends.
Exactly.
Here we are at the end of a month. Busy month.
Did you guys like the new Star Wars show? Did you not like the new Star Wars show? Have you seen Deadpool 3 yet? If not, we'll be having an episode out soon about it, so stay tuned for that if you're a fan of Deadpool and such.
Not just that, but we've had a lot of Wednesdays.
5 Wednesdays this month. So
it's been a
busy month.
Busy month for us. If you're not already, subscribe down below. Hit the bell.
Should do that.
So you get notified every time we upload. It's every Wednesday around 9 a.m. Just a heads up.
Our time.
Yep. We're also on every major podcast platform, so feel free to give us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Drop a review. Helps the podcast out a lot.
Booyah.
And without further ado, we're going to dive into this month's Anime of the Month.
Which you can probably see from the title. This is the 7th month of us doing this. We've been doing Anime of the Month every year. Every month this year.
Every month of this year.
That made more sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been enjoying it. This one we had to get done earlier.
Not that you guys know.
We did mention it in a previous episode, but we cranked through this one. This is probably the fastest we ever watched the Anime of the Month.
For us particularly, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And for those of you who are unaware and didn't read the title, the Anime of the Month for July was 91 Days.
Exactly. So, if you caught us last time in the Anime of the Month for June, we talked a little bit about this in the synopsis of it, but I'm going to read you the synopsis again, just to refresh your guys' memory. Synopsis. As a child living in the town of Lawless, Angelo Lagusa has witnessed a tragedy. His parents and younger brother have been mercilessly slaughtered by the Venetti Mafia family. Losing everything he holds dear, he leaves both his name and hometown behind, adopting the new identity of Avilio Bruno. 7 years later, where our story takes place, Avilio finally has the chance for revenge when he receives a mysterious letter prompting him to return to Lawless. Obliging, he soon encounters the Valetti Don's son, Nero, and seeks to befriend him using the skills he has quietly honed for years. Set during the Prohibition era, 91 Days tells the story of Avilo's dark, blood-stained path to vengeance as he slowly ends each of the men involved in the killing of his family. Now, this is also a spoiler warning ahead as we deep dive into this anime. Definitely.
If you haven't watched it already, obviously, spoilers ahead. I don't know how. Sometimes we get crazy spoilery, and then sometimes we don't. But to avoid the risk,
exactly,
we would highly recommend you go watch it first. Come back. Let us know your opinion. We also have a Discord where while we're watching the Anime of the Month, you can join in conversation and discuss how you're feeling, if you're liking it, if you're not liking it, something epic happened that you want to mention.
Exactly.
We definitely want you guys to join in. So there's a link tree down below to join the Discord and come converse with us about the Anime of the Month.
Heck yeah. Now, some other details before we go fully into it. 91 Days aired back in 2016, the summer anime. Time of summer 2016. Episode count wasn't too bad at all. 12 episodes plus 1 OVA. One of the episodes of the 12 episodes was a recap episode. Usually happens, I feel like, for a lot of animes. If it's only 12 episodes, I find it to happen around like episode 7 or 8.
Happens in both. Happens in 24.
Usually it's
like
episode
2
13 or 14.
Sometimes it's the halfway point to be like, hey, the new season started. Here's a recap of the first half.
I remember the first time I got to experience one of those episodes was Sword Online season 1 or season 2. I can't remember.
Yeah, they might both have one.
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Cool. Anyways, the genre...
Very skippable.
Very skippable
Especially
episode.
if you... Like, personally, I watched this show in less than 3 days.
Yeah, if you binged it, then this episode is completely relevant to you.
Yeah, you just skip over it.
But yeah, obviously, if you don't know by the synopsis, the genre is crime drama, obviously.
It's also a mob
Yeah.
story, which is I'm trying to think back. I don't know if I've actually watched a mob focused anime before. Definitely watched similar style to mob, like if you go back to olden like times in Japan where you have like the shogun and like
that makes
like,
sense. Yeah, that's
it's
not
similar.
It's similar, but
It's
not
a similar
mafia,
line of like
mafia.
it's similar line of like this is the head, we follow the head, and
Yeah.
it goes down to the family, and so. But it was fun because it obviously takes place in the West, and you've got your Italian families that have taken roots in America, and it takes place during a pretty rough time. I think the 20 to 30s is kind of that ballpark, whereas the Great Depression's going on,
The 30s
and
to 40s. There was the Roaring 20s, and then stock market crashed in 1929. And
was
the
it
Great Depression.
1929?
1929 was when the stock market crashed, and then the Great Depression was the 30
Yeah,
to
so
39.
1929 to 39.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Prohibition, kind of just not a great time.
Yeah.
Not a great time. So I guess we'll open up with some initial thoughts. Just keep them real simple. Did you like it or did you not like it?
I thought it was great. I've already recommended it to a few people.
I'm not gonna
Like,
lie. I've also recommended
like,
it to a few people.
It's nice. It's condensed. It's a good story. Each episode, I feel like, wants you wanting. It just gives you a little bit more, and you're like, give me more, give me more.
They do a good job of also leaving you on like those cliffhangers
yeah,
where you're like,
just enough.
like, and so seamless where it's just something is about to, and then the closing, and you're just like, oh, just one more, just one more for tonight.
And then you get to the final episode, and you're like, I just want.
You do kind of want a little more.
Yeah, like I think overall it's wrapped out pretty good.
It's a fantastic 12 episode like
Condensed, easy
and that's what's
peasy.
nice. I really enjoy it's really nice to just be able to watch 12 episodes and be like, I watched the story, I saw it.
Funny thing is, when I was watching it, it was one of those things where I got to like episode 8 or 9, and I was like, dang, is this gonna be wrapped up in 3 episodes? Like, part of me is like, yes, I hope so, but part of me is like,
I don't know if
I like Googled. I was like 91 days, and I was like, no, it's only one season. I was like, okay, so this has got to end soon.
No. Yeah.
So
It was also something that we have so many long running shows, and not even necessarily long running, but shows that you get 12 episodes of, and then maybe you get another season 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line.
we just hope that
hype
season's
dies
not
out. Maybe
filler.
you get it's not the same studio and it's not even good quality, stuff like that. So it's nice to just be able to watch something like, hey, that was done and it was good. I liked it.
Now, was this wasn't based off a manga either, was it? Like I couldn't find the manga because I was like, you know what? I'd grab this manga.
No, it's original.
Okay, that's what I thought. Did they make a
that was
manga
by
adaptation of it?
Studio Shuka, I believe,
Yeah, so I think so.
and they've done Dura. I think we mentioned about this when we first talked about going into this anime. Dura being their biggest and a very popular show at that. Like anyone that I've seen that's seen Dura likes it. So
Yeah, definitely.
and yeah, for an original story, I'd say I'm very impressed with the flow of the story and the pacing overall, and I didn't really have too many complaints overall.
My only main complaint is
No, we'll get to there.
Oh man,
We'll get there. We'll get to your horrible complaint.
it's not even a horrible complaint.
Okay, so
It's not what you're thinking. Anyways,
on to art style and character design. This is also our first time. We're 7 months in, and we're finally getting a little bit more organized.
crazy.
We've realized that some of our previous Anime of the Month episodes, although very raw, and whether good or bad, we definitely get our opinions out,
Definitely.
at
That's
some
for sure.
point.
Yep.
but we're all over the place. So we're trying to keep this a little bit more
Structured
and focused on the same thing at the same time and work our way down.
Exactly.
So art style and character design. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, the art style definitely fit the bill in the sense that it was darker toned. I feel like if any of the scenes really took place, like if any more scenes took place during the daytime, it would almost take away from the overall feel.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like even like inside the bar, even though it was daytime, like it was dark in the bar. I think the color scheme was great. Like all the clothes, the backgrounds, everything was dark, and which made it good too is when you saw the label of Lawless Heaven and it was in like a green bottle, popped in the scenes. And you're
Yeah,
like,
it was the only thing really popping.
exactly, which I thought was great because I feel like that held the story, because as much as the story was about revenge, using Lawless Heaven was also assisting in his revenge.
And Lawless Heaven in this show is the moonshine that our two main characters end up producing for the mob.
Exactly.
And that being, I think it was Angelo that has the original idea to, hey, let's actually sell this to the mob because it's a way to get in. And his quote unquote brother, but really it's his
best friend.
Best friend that
basically seeked refuge in
with
after
him.
his family was brutally
And
killed.
that was Corteo.
Yep.
He's the mastermind behind the moonshine. He's the one with the recipe. He's just trying to get some money so he can go to school.
Exactly. Otherwise, I mean, I thought the fighting scenes, like the blade work, I thought was relatively clean. Like I had no real complaints about that. Any like actual fight I just thought was good.
Yeah, I agree with you with some of the stuff about the art style. I feel like the outfits were really well done, and all of them kind of fit the personality of the characters. Like Corteo, a lot of his outfits are always very clean. He's very put together, kind of. His character was never very wild. We'll get there, but for the most part,
reserved.
Yeah, reserved, kept well kept. Fango, he had a little bit more color because he was a little bit more
all over the place.
Yeah.
We're gonna leave it at that.
We're gonna a little bit crazier. And then the one thing I really liked about Angelo was that he's often seen wearing his like beret hat or what.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it would be like covering his eyes, almost like he's hiding, because he's hiding his true intentions from everyone, and it's almost like the hat represented that. And when it covered his eyes, it's like you don't really know what his true meaning or purpose or what he really means is.
Exactly.
And I kind of liked that design choice for him. And the other thing that I definitely enjoyed when it came to the overall art kind of design, character design, like you said, the backgrounds were very consistent. They were good the whole time. They fit the mood. Nothing was very bright unless it had importance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Everything was like very muted.
Yeah.
And it just fit the
grayscale.
It fit the tone of the show and the time.
Exactly.
Very well. So we'll jump into animation, and like Matt already mentioned, we have the it wasn't bad. Like it was definitely very mid, like very acceptable, but it wasn't like unreal. But it did have moments of, that was a pretty fun scene, and usually involved whenever a blade got taken out, there was like very smooth transition of using the blade. But there were definitely some times where you would see some really poorly drawn background characters, like faces, and they would be talking, not just like plain background where you'd expect nowadays you'd expect like CGI walking, like characters that were talking, and they would be talking, and it was like the side of their face was talking, and they just drew them out. It was some of those wasn't great, but if you take the good with the not so good and you put together, it was pretty average.
Exactly.
It wasn't great, but not bad. In the middle, hence mid. But the story definitely made up for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think too, I think the story helping along definitely the animation takes a back seat, because obviously if there's bad parts in the animation, but you're there for the story, you're going to push through it.
Yeah,
like I think with overall the animation helped tell the story, like you said, with the tones, like both in character design and in like background design, even the cars and stuff too.
Yeah.
Like I found at some points I was like, oh, the cars kind of look.
I like the attention to detail too. We saw Canadian whiskey be brought. It may have not been a specific brand, but it like said Canadian whiskey, so you knew. And obviously during this time, Canadian whiskey was something that was often smuggled in to the States during the Prohibition. So
exactly.
There was kind of some real history within the story as well, which is kind of cool to see. And just like a really nice attention to detail, I found.
I would agree with that for sure.
Music and soundtrack. So I guess we'll start with the opening and closing. The opening is by TK. Very recognizable voice. If you don't know who TK is, you've probably heard of his opening from Tokyo Ghoul. That's like probably the
the biggest one, I think.
When it comes to anime, he has his own band. I don't have the band up here. That's my bad. He is in a band. This is him doing the openings is usually separate from the band. But I knew it was him the second the first episode's opening played. I was like, oh, TK.
You're like,
All right. All right. And it was a very well-fitting song for the anime. It was very like eerie, where it wasn't like there was never very high intensity in the soundtrack for the opening. It was just very kind of fluid throughout, and his voice is just perfect for kind of, I don't know. It's hard to explain because I'm not massively a music person.
I think his voice fits where it's like, this sounds weird. It doesn't get your blood like pumping, but it like in a weird way like gets you pumped. Because I think of like the Tokyo Ghoul
You're getting
like,
into
intro.
it. But the Tokyo Ghoul intro has like a drop where it gets
does,
intense.
Yeah. But even with this one, I think the animation of the intro also helps you get hyped.
Oh yeah,
for
the
it, too.
scenes are fantastic because it has a great combination of the past of seeing his family get killed and the present and who are the main players in the game now.
Exactly.
And I thought that was really well done. The closing, on the other hand, was kind of interesting. It reminded me a lot of Black Lagoon's ending,
Okay.
where sometimes it would just come up. And in this one, for example, so in Black Lagoon, you see one of the main characters just walking. And very like melodic, like melody starts playing, and it would just happen at like a cliffhanger, and all of a sudden you would see her walking, and you're like, oh, the episode's done. And it had a very similar effect in this show where it was the song is, I think this is a song, I think I wrote it down. The song is by Elisa, and it's called Rain or Shine, and it was like a softer vocal melody song.
Yeah.
And it would open with a gun, like a CGI gun being cocked back and shot, but it would always happen at a cliffhanger, and all of a sudden you see the gun, you'd be like, oh, and the ending.
Yep.
It's over.
I think it's episode 1 or 2 where it really got me because where they were at the cemetery. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's when I was like, dang, that was like good. Just like,
and it's a really good at decompressing. It's not,
yeah,
it's just very soothing almost, if you will. And it really just, there's no lyrics, and just, it's the same imagery every time.
Yep.
And it's a really great way to just calm you down after these episodes are pretty dramatic at times. So I thought it was really good.
I think for me, both the intro and the outro very much help the story. Like you said, where the outro kind of like hypes you up and you're like, okay, I'm ready for another episode. And then the outro kind of like decompresses you. So with it just being straight instrumental, it almost makes you just be like, okay, gotta
Deep
process
breath. Yeah,
what
deep
I
breath.
just like saw. And
What did I watch?
Yeah.
On to the next.
Also, TK's band is linktree Saguri.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
I think that's correct, yeah.
But yeah, I think the intro and the outro both help the story. It's not really.
As for the actual OST, it was pretty forgettable. Like, I don't know if it didn't have to play a big part. Mm-hmm. And there were definitely some moments during higher suspense where the background music picked up and you can notice it. But for the most part, it was pretty under the radar. I didn't really, and for some people that's good.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't take you out of any of the scenes or anything. So, I mean, I didn't have a complaint about it, but I would just say it wasn't stellar. Like, it wasn't memorable.
It wasn't memorable, but I think that, like you said, I think it's good because sometimes you just need that where
it's just kind of filling that empty noise in some cases.
Exactly, yeah. And especially with this style of an anime, I don't think there needs to be the OST or soundtrack or like score playing 100% of the time because you're there for the story.
Silence is deafening sometimes too for the scenes where they're
especially in this crime drama. Like, I think silence helps push the story.
As for sound design, I didn't notice anything egregious when watching. Like, everything seemed to fit what was going on in the show. I don't know if people have seen the meme from one of the Berserk seasons, the CGI version of Berserk, where he throws a knife or an axe at a rabbit, and it makes a clang sound when it goes up against wood in the rabbit. But there's nothing like that. Everything fit. There may have been some alignment. I'm not super
Critical.
anal about that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm not looking for that, so I don't really notice it. So generally, I think everything was
nothing
fine.
nothing stood out for me in a negative way of like, wow, that was not the right sound, or that gunshot was 2 seconds later than it should have been, kind of thing.
Yeah. And within that kind of realm of like really nitpicking, just want to jump back to, I guess this would be under animation, which is the cinematography. I don't have an eye for that kind of stuff, and like framing and shot composition.
Yeah.
So I can't really say if it was good or bad, but from a noob's point of view, since I didn't notice anything bad, I assume it must have been at least decent. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
nothing, I'm not huge on that type of stuff. I'm sure maybe there are films or anime that I've seen that have much better cinematography and composition for a scene, and if they were to insert those ideas into this show, maybe it could have been even better.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's not my cup of tea for that.
I think for me, who knows a little bit more than you when it comes to that stuff, I think the only thing I can point out that I enjoyed is there's certain shots where they just stayed on it. Not for too long, but just long enough that it made you almost uncomfy.
Yeah, like the lingering.
The lingering shots, I think, really pushes it forward too.
That's
because when there's someone who just got shot, or like you think someone's dead,
there's like a really
or, like-
pause, and you feel like am I baited?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've seen so much in both Western culture for media and in anime where gunshot doesn't mean that person was
it's
shot.
the cliche like horror thing where like, oh, guys, we took down the bad guy, and then 2 minutes later he's back up again because they didn't shoot him or they didn't hit him hard enough or whatever, right?
But there's a lot of shots.
Cliche.
Pause. No, that person's actually dead.
Yeah. And I think that pushes the story. I think that almost engages the audience a lot more. So I think that is a huge positive for me with the cinematography.
Yeah,
if
no,
you wanna
for sure.
include that. Otherwise, I think the camera work for the blade fighting, I thought was pretty good too.
Yeah, like the focus on the hand
Yeah.
and then moving into the sense of speed when they're closing in on someone.
Exactly.
As for plot, I guess you want to let's jump into negatives in terms of plot and any other negatives you kind of had for the series.
I don't really have too many negatives. I think it's more like personal preference where I'm like, man, I kind of wish we had one more episode, but I also don't at the same time.
It was kind of a Christopher Nolan ending.
Yeah.
It really
If
was.
you've seen Dark Knight Rises, at the end of Dark Knight
almost,
Rises.
yeah, like it
that's
really was like
exact
kind of
feel.
like that, where you're like,
Yeah.
huh?
Is it, or is it?
Yeah, exact. Is or isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I enjoyed that where I'm like, man, I'd love to figure out what happens next.
Yeah.
But I'm also happy that I don't.
I like it. I liked
That's
the
what I
ending.
mean. Yeah, it's not really a negative. My only nitpick, I think, overall is when the main character, after he gets hired and he's told to go kill the one guy,
Yep.
and he goes upstairs to that like hotel or whatever you want to call it, and then he escapes through the window. I think that's the only nitwork where I'm like, I don't know if he would have been able to make that jump. Like Fango, it was like a bit of a high jump, and then he's like starting to jump from roof to roof, and I was like,
If it was any other character, I would agree with you.
Fair.
But it was Fango.
that's what I mean.
And
It's
he had a
just
screw
weird.
loose.
He did. I agree. And again, it's not even really a nitpick. I'm like, I don't know if you would make that jump, but
And then he was originally like the muscle
exactly
of his family, and so I can believe it. I can believe the jump. It didn't.
That's fair.
It didn't take me out of.
No,
the
I don't
show.
think it did. But if I'm looking for trying to nitpick and get a negative, that would be the only potential. I mean, I watched it dub, but then certain episodes I still had like the subtitles on.
Sure.
Just because sometimes if I'm like not too close,
If
thing.
you're watching on Crunchyroll, I think the subtitles also, when you're watching it dubbed, are
slightly
they're not actually the proper subs.
agreed. Yeah,
They're the like closed captions for English.
yeah, exactly.
Which were wrong a lot of the time because I think there might even be AI generated,
Oy.
which is why some of them were bad.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that with Crunchyroll, they're doing that. There's a lot of that because something on Netflix, I'll often watch English. If there's an English dub, I'm usually watching the English dub just because it means I don't have to be paying attention as much. I could be doing something else, whether it's like folding laundry or I
Yeah,
could
you're
be
able to
cooking.
multitask.
Yeah, and on Netflix, it's the subtitle. If you have subs on, it's the proper translated subs for if you're watching it in Japanese.
Exactly.
but you can be watching it in English. And it's funny to see when they don't line up, and you can kind of tell, okay, they're obviously trying to fit the mouth flap in English. But in Crunchyroll, I don't think it's the same. I think it's closed captions when you're doing English, like the dub.
Yeah.
But if you were to watch it in sub, those captions would actually be different.
Which is
weird. Yeah.
The one thing I'll quickly mention about the negative, which I know you don't agree with me on this, and I understand your point, and I agree with your point.
Oh, okay.
But I'll mention this because we talked about this off camera, where I was watching it, I'm like, man, the food doesn't look like the best, because I always, like, we've talked about in previous episodes where, like, anime, they always go full out for their food.
Yeah, but you've also seen a lot of
I've also seen a lot
high
of
quality
anime when
Studio
it comes to food.
Ghibli, whoever you want to say it.
Yeah.
You know.
So it makes sense. But like you said, like, you can talk about your point to go against that. Yeah, I saw it when I was watching. I was like, oh, the food doesn't look the best. But then you brought up a good point where we're like, well, it's the 1930s during the Great Depression, so the food's not gonna look great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fair point.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, the reason why the food stood out is because it was one of the only colorful things in the show.
Some of it was.
Yeah.
Only the one family, the one rival family, and his obsession with the lasagna. And there's only one scene where it actually plays an importance, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But for the most part, yeah, it was, I think one time he's eating ribs or something, and it didn't look as that great.
Yeah.
But I'm not, it's a show not about any focus on food.
Yeah.
So I wasn't completely, and then when the lasagna was important, it did look better than most of the other food we've seen, which
Agreed.
was nice to see.
Yeah.
For me, for negatives, same thing. I don't really have negatives for it. I thought overall it was a really well done show. I think one thing I'll say is, if you're not into the darker, grittier stories or a revenge story overall, it's not going to be your cup of tea. That goes without saying, right? But that's not really a negative for the show, right? That's just preference to a genre or a storyline.
Yeah.
And then I have here in the negatives, disagree greatly with Matt about the food.
I see that now, yeah.
It looked fine. Yeah, it wasn't Studio Ghibli level, but it was fine and it fit the time period. And then I said food during the times probably would not have been super colorful. And
You're right.
Remember, this takes place during Prohibition times and stuff. And things that did pop were like the lasagna, which is a much more, probably a luxurious food, if you will, for the time. On to some positives about the plot and everything overall. I'll get us started. Mafia Story, I mentioned it before. Don't know if I've really seen one, and if I haven't remembered it. So I thought it was fun to be put in a different experience, a different world. That is actually very similar to the West. It was Western characters, a story within Western history that actually happened. Not that the characters are real people, but there were, the
Great Depression did happen. The mafia was a big thing.
Yeah, mafia, big thing. When it came to, the banning of alcohol, and this is a real thing. Like I said, the attention to detail with the Canadian whiskey being brought in, because that was a big thing for Prohibition. Canada didn't have it. So I did like that. I thought that was fun. I also I'm a bigger fan of the dark gritty. I like that stuff. And I also have down 12 episodes and done. That is just something you don't get a lot now. Exactly. And it's nice to see. I also had great setup. That first episode, getting set up with the reason for revenge, if you will. I thought it was really well done. If you've ever read Vinland Saga, seen Vinland Saga, has a similar there's a similar relationship with the main character and his target for revenge, where this one, it's not quite father-son, which is a little more what it's like in Vinland Saga, but there is what appears to be on the surface a good relationship or a respect for one another, even though obviously we know that the true desire for our MC is to kill that one person.
Yep.
So I kind of liked their relationship, even though we knew what was potentially going to happen. I thought that something that was cool and not often done is Angelo was set on revenge, but he would truly do anything for that revenge. Like obviously one of the themes would be revenge or vengeance in this, and he took that, like the core of that character was true to it.
Yeah.
He would do anything for his revenge. He was very intelligent, methodical, but ruthless if it meant he could get to his goal. It's like, imagine Batman if Batman would kill people. You know what I mean?
Just Thomas Wayne.
Like, for real,
Yeah.
though. Like, he just was like, I'm getting my vengeance.
Exactly.
Another big positive was pacing. Pacing was really great. There was never an episode that kind of just felt like you were in a lull period. There was always progression. We were always moving forward. If a time skip needed to happen in terms of whether it was a week or a month, it was happening.
Yeah.
We were moving forward. And there was never a dull moment, if you will. You were always on the edge of your seat. And like we said, the endings were definitely on those cliffhangers where you were just kind of like, it always left you wanting more to watch that next episode. I also have down that characters were always like true to themselves as they were introduced and as we learned about those characters. They never kind of, except for one, but it made sense. They never really broke out of their character mold.
Yeah.
They stayed within, and that kept the story feeling real. Characters were never really doing something that you wouldn't expect them to do or out of character unless there was a reason for it. Biggest example of that is Corteo. When Corteo basically betrays everyone, including Angelo, with the sole purpose of trying to free Angelo.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only time where a character is kind of breaking out of his mold, and there's a perfectly logical reason.
Fit well, though.
Yeah, and it doesn't bring you out of the story in any way, which was something I liked. There was never a time where that disbelief was broken because of a character's choice.
Mm-hmm.
It was always, oh yeah, I can believe that. That makes sense for the character.
Agreed.
Right? And then, like I said, the attention to detail with like the Canadian whiskey bottle and stuff, I like that. What about you? What do you got?
I mean, a lot of my notes are similar to your notes in the sense that it was a good length. Like, the story felt quick.
Yep.
Like, there was no lull periods. Like, it kept moving forward. I don't usually watch too many animes that is a darker tone. So it was a nice switch up from what I'm usually used to watching. But I also enjoy the concept of like he's not a fully unreliable narrator, but he's more on the level of that where you know what his overall goal is, but you're unsure exactly what his next move is.
Yeah, you never truly know the lengths he's going to go. And like we said, we have that relationship that's built, and you're like, oh, is he going to falter at the end because...
Well, that's the thing, yeah. When he creates his like friendship with Nero, like you really don't know if he's like, you want him. It's weird because you're like, I don't want you to.
And then he'll say like a one-liner like, oh, I have a brother too.
Oh my
Do you
gosh,
wanna...
episode 7.
I'll introduce you to
Best
him one
line.
day. Yeah.
I love that line where they're casually talking and he's like, oh yeah, I had a little brother too. Maybe I'll introduce you to him someday. And from the audience, you're like,
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's savage.
that is like, Nero has no idea how much that line is actually like.
Yeah,
oh,
it's savage. It's a
chef's
savage
kiss
line.
though. Definitely one of my favorite lines. That's episode 7, which I think is just like one of the best
Yeah, it
episodes.
was fantastic.
None of the episodes are bad. I wouldn't be
No,
like,
no,
oh,
they're all
this-
great. Like
this
I said,
episode
they
is
always-
worse than- yeah, even
you're
the
always on
OVA was good.
You're always on the edge of your seat. You're always, and the thing is, I checked the wiki. So much lore about all the characters too. If you really want to get into the family
insane.
members and
Yeah.
all the way up to the Dons, like it was good. Like
There's lore. It's
pretty
lore
complex,
heavy
which
for
is
12 episodes,
Yeah, it's
which is
pretty
crazy
interesting.
to think about. Yeah, I think even the OVA was good.
yeah, the OVA was interesting. I
Yeah,
don't know
it
if
was like
I'd say
3 mini.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know if I would say it was good, but it was something that provided some extra little stories,
extra context,
Yeah.
extra stories for sure. Yeah, I think we can move on to the final thing. I guess there's 2 things left.
Yeah, I have overall enjoyment. This is I kind of broke it down the ways I kind of look at ranking when I'm taking it more seriously. When I'm ranking an anime, I kind of rank everything from 10 and those kind of things we took down, stuff like art, animation, character design, overall plot, and then sound, and then I also have enjoyment, because enjoyment's important.
I agree.
Something can be
crisp,
amazingly
and amazing.
animated, have a beautiful sound. But if it's boring or you didn't like, that's important.
Yeah.
Enjoying something is still important.
I think if you look at some of like the movies that win like best movie of the year and stuff like that, and if it's not your genre that you don't like, then you're not gonna like it. Like straightforward. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's a great film, but if you don't like that style of filmmaking or you don't like it, you can be like, yeah, it's a shot great, but it's not my cup of tea.
Exactly.
Then you're just not gonna enjoy it, and that's okay too.
So for me, enjoyment, like if I was watching this on my own without the podcast, definitely would like, and it came out as a season now, passing the 3 episode rule by far. Like episode 1, I'm already in. I'm hooked.
Agreed. I was gonna say episode 1, like when they're in the bar and like they jump in the car and they're like, oh, so who's Nero anyways? They're like, where is Nero? And then just Nero just
he takes the beard off, the fake
You're
beard,
like,
yeah.
all right, this is the kind of story we're going with. Cool.
I really enjoyed the twists and turns that were within the series as well.
Same.
All because it is a drama, but there's like that little bit of what's going to happen next, and you really don't. Some of them are very unpredictable. We've managed to avoid the one spoiler, so I'm not going to say it, but that blew my mind. I think that's episode 9 or 10 that happens.
Yep.
And I was
Shocked.
stunned by both parties.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I can't say anything better than like I cranked through it in like 2 days. So, you know, like it was that enjoyable that I didn't want to stop watching it. I just cranked through it. What about you? What would
Honestly,
you say for enjoyment?
Great.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Like I love, like you said, like there's constant twists that was happening. What felt like almost every episode. The lore was great. Again, if you want to break from shonen or you're not into shonen, you want something that's more realistic per se.
Yeah,
like
it kind of feels a little bit more
fantasy-esque.
ingrained in the real world.
Exactly.
Like obviously it's still fiction, but it has a lot of real elements that have happened in the world, and it's our Earth, right? Our planet, our world. So
exactly. Straightforward.
Final thoughts. I would say if
I'd
you haven't
recommend
seen it, if somehow you're here, similar kind of that revenge story kind of got, you know, we got Code Geass, which is more of a mechy
Revenge story.
chess game of a revenge story. And then we got Vinland Saga, which is a revenge story, but you're not able to get your revenge. And then we've got Dororo, which is a revenge because you want all your organs back. Sword swinging.
Yeah.
Well, and then this is another revenge story, but I would say where revenge wins, if you will.
Yeah.
Not that you should ever seek revenge.
Revenge
you
gets
know?
a happily ever after in a way.
It doesn't get a happily ever after, but it's satiated. It's
it's accepted.
the revenge that our main character wanted, he got.
Mm-hmm.
So you could argue that he was happy in the end, and that nothing stopped him. Nothing stopped him from getting his revenge. He became the Hokage of his story. But yeah, I definitely really enjoyed a lot of the plot twists, and even the time period. It was cool to see his story from that time period in America. And I've already recommended it to other friends. So
Same.
Very easy, fun series to watch. There are some scenes that'll probably get you teary-eyed for sure, but it was a great series.
Agreed. Nerdy Misfit approved.
Nerdy Misfit approved. Absolutely.
And then, as at the end of every month, we tell you guys what we're watching for the next month,
Which is August.
Here we are, month 8.
Month 8, August.
And the anime of the month is
Odd Taxi.
On Taxi. And here we go about the synopsis here.
Yep, go take her away.
Eccentric and blunt, the walrus Hiroshi Odukawa lives a relatively normal life. He drives a taxi for a living, and there he meets several unique individuals. The jobless Taichi Kabasawa, who is dead set on going viral. The mysterious nurse Miho Shirakawa, the struggling comedic duo Homo sapiens, and Dobu, a well-known delinquent. But Odokawa's simply way of life is about to be turned upside down. The case of a missing girl the police have been tracking leads back to him, and now both the Yakuza and a duo of corporate cops are on his tail.
Hi, it's another mob show.
Hey.
Obviously, a lot different from the Italian names we were just saying.
Exactly. Sitting at an 8.66 on my anime list.
Yeah, it's a very highly rated series. Another one that I don't know if there is a season 2 or if this covers.
There's a movie and a special.
Yeah, but you never know with a movie.
Yeah, you don't know if it's a filler or not.
Yeah. It could be based off source material. Unsure, but we're excited. It's highly rated. It's what would the term be? Anamorphic? Is that
Anamorph, yeah.
where
Humanoid animals.
Humanoid animals are the main characters we're following. And yeah, I'm excited. It's relatively short. It's on Crunchyroll if you're watching in the West. So, go ahead and check it out. If you don't have Crunchyroll, I'm sure you can find a way. And like we mentioned before at the beginning of the podcast, we do in fact have a spot to converse about it in our Discord. Linktree down below to get there. And we would love to have you guys join us. Put in your 2 cents about the anime. And let us know if you enjoyed 91 Days or not. Or if you're going to go watch it now.
Heck yeah. You let us know. And until then,
see you guys next week.
See you next week in August.
Bye.
Bye.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast. Don't forget to join the island by dropping a follow. Thank you, and see you next week.